It? Go ahead. Yeah, I'm Vladimir. I've just introduced myself. And anybody else wants to jump in? Introducing?
Me, I can start. Donc, I am Ufdo Anas. I am also an engineer on specialist informatics, and I work on JMeter many years ago. Even I am not, it's not my principal work, but I work many time ago, and I have started the project JMeter as code from my personal reasons, because when I need to work on, as I always say, on big projects, using the graphic tool is not easy. It's not easy to work as a team or to see change in, when the project in JMeter is on 2 years working, is not too easy to see what is changed and the evolution of the projects. And also, as I work in the same context in e-commerce projects, the e-commerce projects, they are the same scenarios still, but between projects there are some difference. But using JMeter is not easy to reuse code, or not like Java, when we can extend, we can have our promo framework to reuse it and extend from it. And maybe if there is any similar in other projects, we can factorize in abstract class, and we can extend, and we can do what we can do as oriented object class. And for me, it's important for the JMeter also give to us and to all users to this capability to use more code, as other concurrents should already do this. I think that JMeter should have this way also.
Hello, I'm Roger. I will present myself as well. Nice to meet you guys. I'm Roger Verenda. I'm from Uruguay, South America. If you don't know it, between Argentina and Brazil. I work. I mainly have a background in development. I had many years working for a company where scaling application and handling big loads of data and transactions was the key point, and the performance was a big part on it. That was my first approach to JMeter, because the quality and the performance was very important in such scenarios. The scalability, the reliability of the system, etc. From then, I mean, I was a Java developer there. I started doing some leading in some teams. I moved into an architect role at some point, and then I moved to another company. It's called Abstracta. It's a company focused on software quality, and we sell testing services and consultancy. There are areas for performance, functional testing, automation, etc. And the company works a lot with JMeter. I'm currently in the CTO role there. So, but I still program a lot, as you have seen in the DCL. I spent many hours programming. I like a lot programming. And I have a lot of experience with JMeter itself. We implement some plugins for it in conjunction with BlazeMeter. We work with BlazeMeter as well. I have always been trying to contribute the things that we can. I mean, it depends on the company you're working on, but if we can, or if I can, I try to contribute whatever I can to the community. So that's when I first started with JMeter, I had kind of the same issue as Anna mentioned about I was a programmer, so for me, having those JMX and XML files were too verbose for Git, and they didn't having like good engineering practices on top of JMeter. You can do it, you can modularize it, but it's not as easy as having code. So I had this idea of doing something on the programming side. I found that the API on JMeter was not nice enough. I left that idea kind of in a stash, and then I proposed to the CEO of Abstracta to make something about that. and we decided to do the DCL, and that's why we published that the last year, I think it was. So yep, start investing effort on that. So really nice to meet you guys. I hope to meet you all. Thank you.
Cool. Let's talk about me. I'm creating a framework from a concept of certain perf-ops like conception, where the load testing will be as a service for the product teams. We want to keep the scripting as simple as possible, maybe even with much automation as possible to generate something scripts hands off of maximum. So I'm very interested to migrate to code behind solutions, and I'm not developer, so I'm have some difficulties during the transition to DSL, but that is my goal. That's all.
I'm Felix Schumacher. I'm from JMeter, and I haven't done anything in a kind of DSL yet. I'm interested to see how we can connect the DSL and the JMeter core stuff without breaking anything that shouldn't be broken. That's from me.
Okay. So anyone else? Okay, how do we do then? There is a, I'm not sure if it is a well-known issue, but there is an issue where there is quite a few comments regarding the building up the community, regarding building the DSL, regarding pros and cons of different ways of implementing the thing. So if you are interested, you might try reading this. However, what I see is people in written form, they are very dogmatic, like, let's do this. Oh, no, we don't. We wait options, we find pros and cons and things like that. And I'm not sure if it is always like that, but in open source communities, when it's just my experience, that's what I'm sharing. In open source communities, it is hard to find a consensus. It's not like I'm not trying it, but it's really hard because there is no common denominator. Like if you work for the same company, if you work for the same project, you have the same goals and you can just agree, okay, we do this and get things done because we have certain timeframes when we need to deliver things. But in open source, there is no strict timeframes like, oh, when do we deliver this? When someone has time, right? And that makes it extremely tricky for me, these kind of discussions. So that's why I propose to have a meeting and see how it goes. The inputs for me personally are like, I want to make JMeter more accessible for the ones who want to go into automation. I think JMeter has a great story for those who don't program a lot, like who can do something with configuration, with Excel, with the UI. That's really helps. Even though JMeter has if controller, while, so you need to get the concept of loops, conditions, but you get it in a not very programmatic way. So it's not really programming, and you're doing programming, you don't know you're doing it, but it works. And it is just enough for many cases. However, when people grow out of this, they get in trouble. So I have seen many times people trying to build test elements, and they have no idea how to do it. I mean, even myself, I was really puzzled to see how should I build this hash list 3 or whatever it is called. But anyway, this has been discussed for a number of times, and I think there it is important to have this connection, like for non-programmers to become programmers. So I'm not much interested in those who are experienced or seasoned, say, Java developers or whatever developers. So developers can build tools like we see now. We see many tools. I mean, at least 3 or 4 of them built by different people with reasonable time frames. So it is able. So programmers can build frameworks for themselves. The thing is, it is hard to board people there. It is hard to make them use it sometimes. And it is needed to get in core thing, because otherwise we have trouble with promotion. That's what I think. So just don't hesitate to interrupt me. It's not supposed to be like I'm telling the story, but if you agree, you can just note, and that's fine as well.
I want to add something. It seems to me that this also contributes to fact that that the scripts are more maintainable, and also parts of the scripts will more reusable, and it's a goal too. The goal.
Text format is not a single way of doing that. So JetBrains MPS can bring UI with modularity, with version control, with merges, graphical UI for merge, and things like that. So it is possible to do the same thing for UI. It is just not there yet.
It's more harder.
That depends.
Practical code.
That depends. Of course, it is a bit harder to do, but the tools are gaining up to speed. That's the important point. So we started this conversation. So if you open the conversation regarding DSL, the parent email was launched in 2016, I guess. So it was quite a few time ago. And the tools were not that great by that time.
Okay, in my case, when we would like to create like a service, load as a service, performance like a service, JMeter like a service, we strive to meet the needs of our developers, and that's why I talk about it.
Don't get it. I don't understand what you mean. So you mean you are trying to target users who will use performance as a service, and they might need some kind of DSL. But well, let's put this a little bit aside. There are different ways to approach it. But what I mean is, like, the discussion was started long ago.
Okay, it's okay.
So yeah, currently we have beta tools, and I'm not sure. Kotlin has improved a lot. Groovy has improved a lot. Like even Java improved a lot, but I'm not really sure Java is a great language for this kind of stuff. But that's something we can decide. I have a couple of points, or I just want to gather opinions. Oh, okay, Anton, go ahead.
Vladimir, hi. Sorry to interrupt you. Could you please repeat the name of the performance tool which you described several minutes ago, with GUI, but with the abilities to support version control and so on?
You mentioned something about JetBrains model or something.
Yes.
It would be nice to have in the chat. I mean, it's a technology, I guess, for GUI reusage. Okay, MPS. Okay.
Yeah, that's JetBrains MPS, and this is exact video for showing merge and this kind of stuff.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there were quite a few discussions, and there was even a prototype in a list as well. But anyway, let's put this aside. It's a little bit harder. First, I would.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm Olga. And I'm a performance analyst. I have a question. Is it possible to reject from UI completely, or you want to create a UI with some settings, some special settings? I don't know.
Okay. What
to make a full replica of Gatling, for example.
That's a tricky question.
Using Groovy or something else, or do you want
That's
just?
okay. Let me go fast forward to what I'm suggesting. I recently filed a pull request, which is like draft pre alpha. So it's just something to get discussed, to get started. But the idea is you will be able to write JMeter scripts in this or similar way. So you can run it from, I don't know, public static void main function. So you compile it to jar, you start it like this, or you make this thing and generate JMX out of it, and then you open this JMX in your UI or whatever where you launch JMeter. So the basic, I mean, the version number 1 will generate JMX, which you run through regular stuff, like you open in JMeter UI and debug it, or you open it in headless mode and run it headless. That's a basic thing.
That would be nice. Okay.
Yeah. So what we probably we can discuss the layout and the DSL stuff, but basically I want to have something started, just probably with the minimal thing. The question for me or for the discussion is, do we want to include it into the core, or do we want to say evolve on a side and then somehow evaluate and merge to the core if, I don't know, needed, or if something happens? What do you think?
I can say a few words because this Kotlin approach is very similar to Groovy stuff. And well, I think the main problem which I had when doing this is that this test element API is sometimes not consistent. Sometimes some things are done differently. So even if you pick up Kotlin and you do something, you probably come across the same problems which I have. And you probably would like to improve the test API just to have to make easier the Kotlin DSL. So from my point of view, I still think that whenever Kotlin or Groovy is kind of front end, but in command line, right? For the test API. But for example, the Java approach is more like wrapper around, you know, some burden of the test element API, which helps just to build in Java stuff. So I think this is two different things. And from my point of view, if you go with Kotlin, for me it will be also good because you probably improve the test element API, and I can have you know nicer code on my side, to be honest. So I still think that whenever you use the Kotlin, there's still some bunch of people which would like to use the Groovy for their stuff. So from my point of view, it's for now it's good enough if we make the test element API more consistent and kind of make the starting the JMeter engine and all the configuration which is needed, like for example, safe service properties file, which is needed to start anything, because otherwise it doesn't work if it is not on the class path. It could be somehow hidden.
Oh yeah. Just sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah.
The initial plan was for 30 minutes. So if you have like time constraints, feel free to disconnect. I have 30 minutes more. So I'm not sure how we proceed. Do we continue or do we stop with the certain elements?
I vote for continue.
Okay. Let's see how it goes. But anyway, the point I agree, it is worth improving test API to like test element API. It is, I think it's not a question. It is just something that requires time investment, right? So you need to invest time, do this stuff to this static JMeter to make a table to run multiple instances in the same JVM without interaction, because currently there is just a single set of properties and you cannot have two JMeter instances running in the same JVM, which is sad. But anyway, the question number one for me is, do we need something in core, or we are fine with the external projects?
I think we probably well, in case of Groovy and Kotlin, I think it's fine. It's separate, and the core is just more adapt to these new ideas. But from my point of view, I think it's fine if separate, and then you know, probably you can, you know, go with Kotlin or whenever. But I also was thinking about how actually thinking to run the Kotlin stuff, because I'm not totally not know the Kotlin. I just know that it exists and see some example, but you know, I don't know the ecosystem very well. Can you run it as a script, or it must also be compiled by?
There is a well, basically any Kotlin code must be compiled. So you have a dependency on Kotlin compiler, which is 14 megabytes or so. So even if you want to run this as a script, there are possibilities. So there is a standard way of running Kotlin as a script. I know a company who use Kotlin instead of Bash.
Okay,
so
but do you have this possibility like Groovy that you can grab
exactly. You can specify dependencies using these Maven coordinates. So you can just basically have a single script with mentions the plugins you want to apply, the test code, you run it, it executes. So it is really doable.
Okay. Or probably JUnit.
That's possible as well.
Okay.
For the question, in my point of view, regarding if it will be in JMeter core or not, I prefer to be in the JMeter projects, as even we have to do some effort now and the project work fine, they will be evaluated in the same way. Now, even we have some isolated projects, it work fine, but tomorrow if JMeter will be moved to version 5 or another version, or version 6 or another version, we don't control what changed in the JMeter. If they are in the same place, the impact will be should be managed at the same time, and it should be more easy to see it if there is any regression in a path. But just I have another question regarding the way that we have to use DSL, because I see that it is for the easy, for some small tests, and to do it from a non-JMeter and non-developer user. What will be the difference between DSL and what is the Taurus? Because Taurus is already can give us YAML, using YAML to have some small tests, some small loop, and we can do the smallest test that we can do using JMeter, we can do using YAML only in the Taurus. And what we can do more with DSL in this case.
Yeah, I think the kind of DSL, how it's Kotlin Groovy, it's what you can do everything what you want. It really depends how you create it, because from my point of view, this approach where you have custom DSL is kind of a builder, right?
I just have a quick. I have another sample. For instance, suppose there will be an open model thread group, which is yet another story I contribute right at the moment. But the open model thread group with load profile configuration. So you configure load profile as configuring the rate and the duration of the test. And suppose you want to make several steps of the load, or you want to make it conditional. With having DSL, you can put trivial things like for, if, and other statements. And now you have the same open model thread group with dynamic load profile. Not really dynamic, but load profile which is configured by a series of actions. So you don't need to copy paste things, and you have variable. You can get variable from the command line. So for instance, you can include elements like debugging elements into the resulting script based on the environment condition. Like if I'm running, say, a debug version of the script, it will have extra assertions, it will have extra logging statements. And if you
so you can just treat this DSL as a template, for example, also. So you can put some logic in generation of the template, and then it just generates you different,
yeah, but then you
scenarios.
So either you invent these loops and conditions in YAML, which is kind of weird. So YAML is not really for loops and conditions. You can use templating language, but if you use templating language,
no, I didn't mean templating language, because if you have this DSL, this is kind of a template, because you can use the normal programming structure like ifs and fors. Of course, it is only for generation, not for the execution, because that's the different phases.
That really depends. Frankly speaking, I would love to make certain lambdas to get extracted from these and compile to Java classes and parse to JMeter for the execution.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying because I have similar ideas, but it turns out it doesn't work. But I don't
make it integrating to the core might make it simpler.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, clear.
Any more opinions on in core versus out of core?
Yeah, I think that, like, my general idea, or the ideal option will be, I mean, when I first reviewed JMeter and wanted to use it in a programming way, I would like just to use JMeter. I mean, I wouldn't want to have something else that I have to use in front of JMeter. I ended up doing this abstraction, or this additional layer that you have to use, or this interface, this adapter, this builder interface to ease the API that JMeter has. It's just a wrapper, as some have already mentioned. But my ideal vision about that is that you shouldn't be, I mean, JMeter components by itself should be easy to use in Java code or in Kotlin code or whatever. But that the pros and cons on that, I think that is, again, it's a major undertaking. You will need to rethink about the test model with focus not only on the UI or extensibility side, but also on how to use it properly from a programming language and ease the users. In addition to that, you also carry a lot of backward compatible decisions and initial design decisions that were made on JMeter, and through the life of JMeter, they have changed, and some things are not consistent, or not even misleading in some senses. For example, I mentioned several times, but for me, it's kind of funny to see some things like the throughput controller. Okay, this is not this is a misleading name for the throughput controller. If you want to control throughput, you have to use the throughput shaping timer. So those kind of things are the things that happen a lot in software development, that you start with some idea, this idea starts evolving, and then since you have to keep backward compatible for everyone or most of the users, you end up with a solution that is not the best solution at the moment. So some of those problems I'm also trying to solve in this another layer that we have started implementing in Abstracta. So for me, it's like, I think that in the end, it would be nice to have a table of pros and cons of each alternative, and we can put there, okay, I think this is a pro and this is a con, and we can maybe vote on what we think is the weight for each of them, and decide in a rational way, or I think there is a name for this method. But in any case, I think that we should list all the pros and cons, and then decide what we want to weight better. And you, in the end, glad that you have the leading in this part, you should decide. As Simon said, and as I said, I think that having in the core and building it right into the test element will, in the end, promote the components or in JMeter and also in the plugins to think about the usage from the Java code and not only from the GUI. So that will be like the ideal scenario, but it's, again, a major undertaking. It will imply a lot of decision. It might break things. So I'm a little worried about that. So if you ask me, I will start with the same way I did with the DCL. Start with something new, polish the things that you think JMeter current model doesn't handle well, and I will go that path. But my personal feeling about that is that if we start that, even doing it with Kotlin, it's kind of duplicating the work that we are doing with Java DCL or with some other DCL. So it's kind of implementing another DCL again from the ground up. So that is kind of a...
Yes, yes, Roger. I think that the architecture of JMeter is more than 20 years now. And I think this is the big problem. That is, at this time, it was more focusing on the graphic, and the framework also is focusing how the graphic will be built easy for users. But with this philosophy, it was too difficult to using Java. In my case, I don't use JMeter at all to generate JMix. I use directly from Java to XML, as it was too difficult to in the future for me to know how the evolution for the next time. And this is why I decided at the moment to directly convert to XML, and to know what I have to what I do, even to be based on some components that maybe it will be add a new attribute or change some graphical interface. It will be not generated correctly. And I think that maybe, as say Roger, we have to have all idea and pros and the cons for this idea, and maybe see what we can do for the JMeter core to be more flexible in the future, to open the other way to generate JMeter. And maybe in this case, maybe using Kotlin and Groovy, it's not the big problem. If the we have a easy way to be integrated with JMeter, maybe we can have the both, maybe Kotlin, Groovy, and even in 2 years or 3 years, there is other language or other people need, we can add it.
Okay. Thank you. I see. Well, I kind of agree and disagree. I might really sound as okay. I have the only way of doing this, so we go there. And but well, it does sound. It probably sounds like that. But anyway, regarding in core and out of core, I have a couple of points. I would agree. I would really agree that if the thing is in core, then new features will get support kind of for free. For instance, suppose I'm adding a new thread group, which is, well, it might be not really a thread group, it might be a virtual user group or something. But anyway, suppose I'm creating a new thread group. If I don't care on the DSL part, it might be that I implement the thing which looks fancy in the UI. It looks fancy in the UI. But then when a DSL developer wants to plug it in, they will have hard time trying to figure out how they would present it in the DSL, because, well, DSL was not really in the requirements. So if we just throw stuff at DSL developers, they might get trouble. If we think that, oh, I'm building a new component or I'm adding a feature, how would DSL users use it? Because sometimes people cannot really deal with UI interfaces. They can read text, but they cannot really see, right? So there are cases like that. And if you design your application from with this in mind, you might get better designs, right? That's part of the story. So, well, I did design this DSL with DSL in mind, just for the future. So that's why this rate and things, they look like function calls. So they map nicely. And if we have DSL in core, we can better design, probably. We can faster support, and we can have more user coverage, I guess.
Maybe what I mean that we have to add a contract between the graphical and the real components. Now the GUI and the components, they are too many attached, and the graphical tool maybe the graphical UI maybe sometimes attack directly the properties without using any method in the other way, and this is why we can't we don't imagine what's here happen. Each component maybe it's too different from other, and there is no logic that force the GUI to use some contract to access to data. And if we can include this contract some way, maybe we can, for the other method, we have to deprecate method, a new way to be integrated. In this case, we can integrate also other way. We can add other GUI should be here everywhere, and we can add the component. And also, if the contract is in the core, other one who should develop a new component or maybe a non-old component, they have to know how, if they want to their component to be also available in DSL, they know how they should develop it. But in our case now, we are too isolated, and there is no way that other people, if he develop a component, he knows that there is maybe a second way to do it is DSL. He should develop the new the method for DSL. But maybe
just a quick question. Do you know of well, yeah, test bins are something. So test bins provide introspection to whatever is settable or gettable on the thing. But I'm not sure we can provide, say, nice looking DSL for the end users based on some properties only. Of course, we can add more metadata to the bin definition, like this is very important property, this is less important property, this should have its own function in the DSL, and things like that. But it would really be time consuming, I guess. I'm not sure. So
I don't say that DSL will be automatically done, but if there is a contract between graphical and the real component, we have to isolate we know that we have just to be interfaced with the real components with DSL, and it's done. And there is no rule that come from graphical tools. For example, the validation.
What I mean is, like, suppose you have this thread group 210 definition. I claim this has to be picked manually. I'm not even sure we can invent a contract or whatever which would propagate this information to DSL implementations. So DSL function would be created with this, I don't know, number of users, number of loops.
Yes, I am agree. This will be done manually.
Okay.
But for example, validation, many validation, it is present in the graphical tools. Maybe if, for the example, thread group number should not be more than 10. This validation you will find not in the component who do the test, but you will find something in the graphical tools. And if you directly from the DSL you will add maybe a not valid value, it will be accepted because the validation is in the graphical component, not in the component. This is what I say. Maybe if we have a clear contract between the master of data, I see that the component should be only has an input to have, and anyway how input data will be given, if graphical or from the DSL or other way. This component should be autonomous to validate his data and do what he has to do.
That's a fair point, that there should be a way to validate inputs, but users do input data like this, and if you try to validate this, it is kind of tricky. I mean, sometimes you can evaluate this, but sometimes this function depends on the properties of variables. So you can have hard time validating it. It looks okay, but anyway.
Yes, we can't validate data as variable. Yes, But now in JMeter, there is many cases when validation is that in graphical components, not on the component who use this data. And for this
that might be quite true. That might be quite true. I agree. It is really puzzling. But I'm not sure it really answers the question of in-core versus out-of-core. Because, well, you state a problem, the validation is kind of, there is no common way to do validation. Let it put this way, right?
It's just an example. An example who that business rules. It's graphical, but not on component.
I guess you might even create a certain number of validation frameworks for the companies. Personally, I have a story where there was a validation engine class, then validation engine 2, then validation engine 3, and then validation engine 4.
No. What I say what I say by this is not to have a generic validation for data. What I say that the component that when you have to develop, for example, a new sampler for a new protocol, the contract, this contract should be clear from the way of the component. You should implement maybe a generic sampler, and in this sampler you have a method validate, you have a validate execute, you have all the contract that is needed, independent of the graphic. The graphical should just give data to validate, and the component himself will validate data, not the graphical tools. This is what I say. There is many rules.
That boils down to UI refactoring. I fully support this. I fully support like declarative UIs, which you might have seen by Jetpack Compose. I'm not sure you have seen that, but it is a very promising Jetpack Compose. Yeah, this one. So it has not for Android, not for Android only, but it has lots of implementations, including desktop, including web. So you can build UIs in this kind of way, which are declarative. So you put text here. You can have it static or variable, but you don't have logic or validation or something here. That's probably the way to do UIs. It is something JavaScript developers do for ages now with React and things like that. But anyway, let's go back to the initial DSL discussion. Yeah, so basically for me, the item number one is if we have DSL in core, it would make faster for the new features to be supported. Say if I submit a new thread group, I can just have a DSL for it. That's not a problem. I can have it, and wow, we have the next release with both features. That's cool. The second option is there is kind of unclear policy for the Apache Software Foundation. The policy is that the ISF project, like Apache projects, must not promote vendors, technologies, plugins, whatever. So what we ship as Apache team, we ship source code, and we ship software which can be adapted freely and without charge. That's the spirit for ISF. I might be kind of wrong here, but I think that describes it pretty well. I'm not sure, Felix, would you comment or? Yeah, so the idea is we ship something that is freely modifiable, freely usable, and things like that. So that implies we cannot really list projects like JMeter Java DSL or JMeter plugins on the front page. It is just against the policy of Apache Software Foundation. That's it. So even if we have cool and great projects like JMeter Java DSL, JMeter Groovy, or whatever, they are not really discoverable unless users really want that. They see there is not that, it's unclear which they trust and things like that. So it becomes kind of moot. So there is a user base who knows JMeter, and then they split, and well, the community just splits. That's what I think. So even though even though DSL can be created as say external project, and what I do in this pull request for DSL, it is a completely new folder, so it doesn't really touch any other code. So there is a completely different module. It just uses existing KPIs. Of course, the implementation is like dumb for now, so there's not much implementation. But the idea, it can definitely be a separate thing. But having in core, in my opinion, is good for discoverability.
Maybe we need some kind of environment for quick communication. Maybe we need to move to the messenger, speed up the process.
Which process do you mean?
Discussion process.
Oh, you know what? There is a mailing list which kind of works. The dev list on Apache JMeter is low traffic, so there is not much going on there. So if you subscribe to dev JMeter Apache org, you won't get spammed a lot. I'm afraid I'm generating a lot with these DSL discussions, with this open model thread group discussions. So it is kind of, well, if you see, there is like number of commits, and there is number of comments, which I throw from time to time, but that kind of works.
Just because you have said that, I have also a question regarding the mailing list. Why you still using the mailing list for the JMeter and not using maybe the discussion and on GitHub?
Discussion on GitHub. Wow, that's a good question. I'm not sure SF can enable.
If you see my project, yes, if you see my project, you can see discussion. It's enabled in my project on JMeter as code.
It's a setting on the GitHub repository.
Yes.
You can
we just need. Well, the thing is, we cannot really configure ourselves. So I'm not say.
It's like you enable issue. You can enable.
We need to ask SF Infra. We need to ask Apache infrastructure team. I'm not sure if they allowed it. It might be allowed. We can probably enable it. But frankly speaking, well, we can try. I don't see really a problem here.
Okay.
So we can try. Well, but anyway, based on my experience with this thread group, there is not much feedback. So what I would say is somebody who I just pinged manually, they tried it and they say, okay, it works somehow. Okay, it works. But anyway, other than that, like zero feedback. It looks like nobody even tried it. And what I expect that as soon as we release it, then users, oh, this new JMeter has new thread group, let's try it. And then they will try, and then they will find like hundreds of bugs.
It's hard to try it for
really hard to try. I mean, it's just a single command. You clone the thing, you run a single command, and that's
for users who use GUI in JMeter.
Well, and that is exactly my point. We get zero feedback unless we release. That's my point. So that's why I have this thread group somehow ready, so it works. It has no auto completion. Say, I would really love to put auto completion here, like coloring here. It would be awesome. It's not that hard. We have relevant components in JMeter already, so we just implement it. But I would ship this as a version 1, and then see how it happens. I mostly have the same experience with, say, Postgres JDBC driver, which is kind of used a lot. But the thing is, unless we release, they never review. So we need to ship them. Yeah.
I have some feedback about that, but I don't want to kind of branch the conversation on that regard. If you want, we can have a call on that. But I think I gave you some of my feedback on that.
Oh, yeah. That looks like branching. So basically, what I would, how I would approach it, I think, well, I'm not sure. I think we should get something in core, because we can make people trying it standalone, or we can try integrating it into a, say, DSL component in UI for certain steps to be described as DSL. It might be an idea as well, but anyway, let's ship something. That's point number one. Well, I'm not sure if we can decide this language thing between Groovy, Java, things like that. Well, if anybody wants to build up a table with pros and cons, you are just very welcome. I'm not sure I would like to build this. There is, I didn't describe it, but let me just describe it. It's like with Groovy Builder, yeah. So here we have, let me put, okay, this is fine. So what do we have here? We have something from JMeter build script, which renders documentation. So it takes some XML inputs and builds the HTML output out of it. This is a Kotlin Groovy definition. And what we have here, we need to define a custom and task. Don't ask me why it is done like that, but for historical reasons, documentation is built with velocity. So there are velocity templates in JMeter, and I need to render it. Gradle don't have a standard DSL for, say, velocity Anakia task. It is just something foreign to Gradle. However, Gradle build system has a DSL for defining this custom task. So for instance, if we have a new sampler, which is not really present in the DSL, we know its class name, we know property names, we just want to put it in there, right? We can use similarly looking API to use unknown components in the DSL tree, which is kind of nice, right? I'm not sure you can have this in Java.
Yeah, we can do it. I mean, there is some discussion about that in the DCL issues report. I mean, we are already designing some of that. You can easily have a custom test element API or builder where you specify the class of the core
I mean, the syntax itself would look worse. That's what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, but in any case, I mean, what I mean, like, I think that the core discussion is about the core API or the core logic, if you should implement it on Java or Kotlin. The users in the end, like the layer or the interface that you use, that might be Groovy, Kotlin, or Java, I think that is independent. I mean, if you want to use Kotlin, you want to use named parameters, you want to use, I don't know, init blocks with for loops inside or ifs, you can do it. I mean, if you have this thin layer for Kotlin and you improve it on top of the core logic, that is like my general maybe discussion with you in some sense. Like, I see all the benefits of Kotlin. I understand that we should promote probably using Kotlin as a language for scripting JMeter scripts, but I'm not sure if it is the way to go, because you are kind of taking out all the Java developers that might not be comfortable with Kotlin or don't know Kotlin or another thing.
Exactly. I just take all those Java developers, and I really want them to show up and say, okay, I cannot really use Kotlin. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, but until you release, you don't know.
yeah, the first person to show up and say they cannot really use Kotlin, okay, then we decide. But unless there is a single person, I would suggest to just proceed and see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the question is not on Kotlin or other language. For me, it's how we can do it, having a good DSL cleanly in the core, if it's possible. As for me, Kotlin or other, for me, it's not a problem in the language. I can learn the language. If the question is if we can do it correctly with in the core. And also, I am worried that we have something very attached to Kotlin, and I prefer to have isolated from the logic of the project. And even tomorrow, we can some person like to have Groovy, it will be possible, and not all logic will be in Groovy in Kotlin. And also using Java as most possible, as Java is the any other language can extend from Java, but if you have some class from Kotlin, you can't extend it from Java.
You can. You really can. If you have a Kotlin class, you can really extend it from Java, no problem, absolutely.
But depends of you have, I think there is some syntax, it is not possible to extend from.
Absolutely, there is like very good interop. There are very few cases when you cannot extend, but in most of the cases you can extend or use Kotlin classes from Java. Fine, no problem, absolutely.
Not using extend, I mean extend from Java. I can Java class can extend from Kotlin in all cases.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
there are features unsupported like suspend functions. So if we use coroutines for asynchronous execution, then there are troubles with Java. You cannot really express suspending functions in Java yet. But in regular cases, no problem, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm afraid we need to wrap up the discussion. It's kind of time consuming for everybody. Thank you all for attending. Felix, you want something final? I just noticed you unmuted and then muted, so I'm not sure.
I sometimes tried to chime in, but seemed to be very low in volume or something else, I don't know. About the core and not core discussion, another thing to consider is that we are very low on human power in the JMeter team. And if we integrate it into the JMeter core, then it is Vladimir, me, and Philippe who has to support it. And that is or might come hindering in the development. But I encourage you to come to the JMeter mailing list and talk to us there. Then we will recognize your names and you might get closer to the core team. That would be very lovely to see. And from that, I think some kind of minimal DSL should be in the core for us to test your concerns with the API of the normal elements. So you all have problems talking to the test elements, and I think I know your pain. I've tried to do tests for JMeter if I get a bug report, and I think that should be done better and might be done via the introduction of a DSL.
Oh, thank you, Felix. That really is important. So we do encourage you to subscribe to my link list, to participate in these discussions in, I don't know, GitHub conversations. Don't think there is no way to improve JMeter or contribute to JMeter. So code contributions, documentation, testing is really appreciated. And well, if you wanted, for instance, you wanted to try Kotlin, just contribute to JMeter. There is a way to use it in a real project, which is used by like millions of people everywhere. So that might be an opportunity if you like. Okay, any final thoughts? Okay, then let's wrap up the discussion. Thank you everybody for participation. Let's figure out if we have more. When do we meet next time? It was lovely to see you all. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Vladimir.
Bye. Thank you.